Hello, today we're going to be taking this water pump out of this 2005 Pontiac GTO. The water pump we got to replace it with is this AC Delco pump, which comes with the gaskets and some instructions. Let's take a look at these instructions. If you have the integrated thermostat with the housing, you use the O-ring gasket. If you've got the thermostat that has a separate water outlet, you use this paper gasket. Pull this hose out of the way and loosen this tensioner. Alright, now the belt is out of the way. Let's catch that draining fluid. I made sure the catch can was clean so I can reuse the coolant. I'm only reusing the coolant because it's less than 1,000 miles old and there's no use in just throwing it away and getting new stuff. If you haven't changed your coolant in a long time, it's a good idea to do so because anything nasty in the coolant may damage your new pump. This hose is coming off easily because I just replaced it, but you can also use a pick to get underneath it and break it loose from the metal. This belt is just drenched in coolant, so I'm going to have to replace that. Removing the tensioner now. Not only is it in the way, but it's also attached to the water pump, so it's going to have to come off anyway and be transferred to the new pump. So one water outlet bolt. Yeah, these picks are really handy. Once you get in that far, then it's super easy to break loose most of the hose. And then you should be able to slide it off fairly easily. Aim those upwards so they don't drain down. Last bolt. Alright. Ideally, you're not going to be back here for a while, so spray this clean. 2 water pump gaskets, but they're the same exact thing. You need to put these on the water pump side and put bolts through the water pump to hold them in place while you put the water pump on. You may note that some of the holes look a little oblonged, and there's one on each gasket that is just a circle. That one is going to stay put, and the oblong ones are going to allow the little bit of movement to let the bolts line up properly. Alright, we got all 6 bolts into the water pump holding the gaskets in place. You need to be careful with this because if you tilt it too far forward, the gaskets are going to want to fall off, and if you tilt it too far backward, the bolts are going to want to fall out. Now you just need to get in at least 1 bolt per side started. Make sure you don't cross thread it. Keep the weight off the water pump. And keep the water pump's weight off the bolt. And all 6 bolts are in and the gaskets are lined up properly. Before you put the bolts all the way in, you can confirm that the gaskets are there by looking on the side and seeing that the gasket edge is parallel to the head. It won't be perfectly lined up to the edge of the head, but it will be parallel. Now we just need to torque these down. According to the specs that I looked up, the first pass on these bolts is 11 foot-pounds, and then the second pass is 22 foot-pounds. Alright, we've got our water outlet. You put the thermostat in first. I've lined it up so this tab and this relief valve are facing the ideal way, where this relief valve is up top to let the most air out of the system. Push it in. Make sure the gasket goes in all the way flat. It may want to peel up on you, so make sure that it's flat all the way around. Then the gasket goes on, put the bolts through, and install. Now we slide this hose back on. We'll wait to put this hose clamp back on until these are on. There's 2 different size hoses. Make sure not to tangle them up. Alright, it's on the first tab, not all the way on the back. Now we need to put the tensioner on. I put thread locker in there and cleaned up the bolt threads. Take your time and don't cross thread them. Cross threading them quickly is a whole lot more work than just putting them on right the first time. We're working with mostly aluminum parts today, so no need to impress anyone with how much you can lean on a wrench. Double check everything, make sure there's nothing that looks like it might leak. Then open up your cap and start putting the coolant in. As you're filling it, check for leaks and squeeze the top hose to push air out of the system. You won't get all the air out of the system this way because there's still some behind the thermostat and in the engine, but it'll definitely help speed up the process. Route your belt and put the socket through the belt. Tighten this down as far as you can get it and push the belt on. Now that that's tightened, check all your other pulleys that have grooves in them. Make sure the belt's lined up on that as well. Put the air cleaner back on. Put your emissions tube back on. Check one last time to make sure you didn't forget anything. Neighbors are probably thinking, why is he ringing a bell under the hood? I have edited out probably 20 minutes of wrench turning. And that's for your benefit, because turning a wrench for 20 minutes is not interesting.